Last time when I was here, last week, we went to Fort Ontario where I took 10 months of basic training. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I came back and we were in Camp Edwards, Massachusetts, right? Right? You don't know where I was. Okay, we're in Camp Edwards, Massachusetts now. And we're still doing training. We had done 10 months up in Oswego, New York, in Fort Ontario. Now, when I was in Camp Edwards, the regiment was getting ready to go out on maneuvers. Now, maneuvers is where the whole regiment goes out and they make believe they're at war. And we have part of them are the enemy, part of them are the Allies and the United States troops and all. We fire at each other and we do everything that you would do in a war. Well, they were getting ready to go out and I had a terrible toothache that day and it was real bad. And I went to the doctor, I went to a sick call, and when I got there, the dentist told me, he said, I can't do anything for you. My stuff is all packed up. I'm getting ready, we're going ready for maneuvers. He said, the best I can do for you is I can see you Tuesday. This is Saturday, I got a toothache. So I went to my first sergeant, I told him about it, and he said, don't go on maneuvers, stay in the barracks, and we'll pick you up when we get back on Tuesday. So I went to the barracks, and about 4 o'clock, everybody left camp except the guards. And as soon as they left, I jumped in my full uniform. I went through a hole in the gate. Yeah, I guess I'll tell you this. I was a criminal. I left through the hole in the gate, and I left camp. Number one, you never leave camp without a pass. You're known as AWOL, which is absence without leave. And it's a fine, it's a bad act. You're not supposed to do it. Well, I went down to the train station, I got on the train, and I came to Staten Island. And I came to my dentist. I came home, I went AWOL, and I came home to the dentist. I got there about 9 o'clock at night, and the dentist had just locked his door and was walking out. And he says, what's wrong? And I said, I have a toothache, and I just came in from Massachusetts to get it fixed. And he said, well, I just closed. And he said, no. He said, come on in. So he took me back in, he set up everything, and he looked at me and he said, wow, this is a wisdom tooth, that's bad. That's one of the worst teeth you can have to go. And it was swollen up and all. And he said, really, the way it's swollen up, I shouldn't do anything. But he says, I know I can't let you go like this. So he took the tooth out, and I went to pay him, and he said, you must be kidding. He said, you came all the way down here. First of all, you're absent without leave. You got to be careful you don't get picked up by the military police. You got to get back up to camp, and I'm going to charge you for that? He said, no, there's no charge. So I thanked him. I got on the bus. I went to the ferry, got off, got a train, and went back to camp. When I was in the train terminal, there were 2 military police down there, and they had just spotted me. And I said, oh boy. So I'm trying to get to the door to get on the train, and they saw that, and they started walking fast. And people were in my way, and I didn't want to push them and be disrespectful, but I didn't want to get caught. So fortunately, somebody stopped the police to ask him something. It must have been God, because he's the only one that was on my side then. And he stopped the police, and that gave me a chance because the people looked like they had just opened up the way for me to go in. That's why I said I figured it was God that was there. I went right through the crowd, got on the train, and went way down the other end of the train. And about 2 minutes later, the train pulled out. I got back to camp, and when I got back to camp, I was going through that hole, and just as I was going through, the military police rode past, and I got down in the woods just in time, and they didn't see me. And I got back. Once I was inside that hole, I was safe. Any place I went was all right. And I got back into camp, and nobody ever knew I had gone. So I had to tell you that. But then the regiment came back. They were back about 3 weeks, and they decided they were going to give us passes so we can leave camp and go home. That would be the first time that we had been home in about 10 or 11 months. I got a weekend pass. I was home for Saturday and Sunday. I was supposed to report back Monday. I stayed at my girlfriend's house Saturday night. There she is over there. I married her 65 years. Narcy, wave your hand. I married her 65 years ago. And I spent the night at her house. Sunday morning, there was a special bulletin on the radio. Said, all military personnel report to your base immediately. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. That kept coming on the radio. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Report to your base immediately. So I said goodbye to everybody, and I rushed out the door. And when I got out there, all you could see was military personnel, Navy, soldiers, Marines, everybody rushing to the ferry. We got to the ferry. Nobody was allowed on the ferry but military personnel, and there were plenty of us. We got on the ferry. When we got to New York, everybody was scattering. They're getting buses and trains and boats and taxis, and we were all rushing back to our own military base. Something I didn't tell you was that the 369th, my regiment was an all-black regiment. All of the soldiers were black. All of my officers were black. And the 369th was Coast Artillery anti-aircraft, which meant we have big cannons that would fire bombs from St. George as far as the Statue of Liberty and could hit a ship. They would fire that far. And we had machine guns that would fire up in the air that would shoot down airplanes. That's why we were called Coast Artillery, because we guarded the water, and artillery because we could shoot the airplanes down. Well, I got back to camp, and our big guns were being hooked up to the trucks and all, and we pulled them out to a bridge called Buzzards Bay in Massachusetts. And our guns were stationed there on the bay. The ones for the water were pointing out to the water. The rest of them were pointing up in the air. Some of the soldiers from the outfit had their rifles, and they were patrolling around the area. And I was in my truck, and we were riding around the area. Everything was set for the enemy, but one thing was wrong. Did anybody guess what was missing? You only get 3 guesses. One guess. No, the soldiers were there. We were there.
The defense of the base.
The defensive base, we had that, the hill. The planes? No, none of that was missing. We didn't have any ammunition. We didn't have any bullets to fire. But the guns were pointing out to the water, and the ones for the airplane to shoot them down, and we were walking around with our rifles and all like we were so bad. We didn't have a bullet. We didn't have a stone to throw. The war had come on and started so fast. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, the United States Army wasn't ready for it, and we didn't have anything. So we were putting up a big front, which everybody bought. Nobody knew. No people in Massachusetts, if they're hearing me now, this is the first time they learned that we had no bullets. So then we were told to report back to our barracks and to pack up. We were moving out. We left our guns where they were, and that was unusual. I didn't understand that move, but they told us to start packing our equipment. We were moving out. The Army never told you where you're going. All they said is you're moving out. So we packed up our stuff. They marched us down about 2 miles, and there was a big train down there. This is about 3 days later. There was a big train down there. They told us to get on the train. And when we started to the train, we could see all of our guns and all of our trucks and everything were on the train and back of the ones we were getting in. Those were called freight trains. Our stuff, why we left it, was because other soldiers were going to load it on. We got on the train, and they told us that, relax, we'd be on the train for a long time. They gave us some place to sleep. Pardon me. They gave us some place to sleep, pretty sloppy, huh? They gave us a place to sleep, sleeping bunks and everything. We were on the train for days. I don't know how many days, but every time we look out the window, we were going through another state. We wound up in San Francisco, California. We got off the train, and we were sent to Lockheed Air Factory. That's where they were making airplanes. We were sent in there, and we slept in there for a couple of days. About 2 days later, they said, pack up your equipment, you're moving out. We packed up again. We marched for about 3 miles down to the waterfront. We got down to the waterfront. Here's this great big ship there. And you can look all the way up, and you can see soldiers getting on the ship. And when you looked way up the top, they looked like ants. They were so small. And they were loading onto the ship. We were told that when they call our last name, we walk up the gangplank and give the first name, our rank, and our serial number. So after a while, they called Morris. I walked up, and I got to the door. I said, William A. Jr., Corporal, 202-66869. Boom, on the ship I went. This went on for a couple of days, ships loading on. We found out that our guns and our trucks and all were already loaded on the ship. We stayed there a few days loading military personnel on. Then we could feel the ship pulling away, getting ready to sail. They got about from here to the end of the room there, and I told my buddies, I'm sick, seasick. You ready? So they said, oh, wow, you better go lay down. So I went down, took off my helmet, and laid down, laid my rifle on the side. And a couple of minutes later, they came down, they said, Morris, there's an enemy airplane out there. Everybody got to get on deck. So I grabbed my helmet and grabbed my rifle, and I ran up there. And they looked at me and bust out laughing. They said, wow, for a seasick guy, you sure can move. And they said, how can you be seasick? The ship is only right there. The shore is right there. The land is right. We didn't even hit the water yet. And they had embarrassed me out of being seasick. And never since then, I've got on a lot of boats since then in the Army. I was never seasick. They had cured me. So then on the ship, we had hit the water, and we hooked up with about 2 more ships. And the Japanese hadn't sunk all of our military ships, our Navy ships, because we had one big one that went with us to protect us while we were going over to wherever we were going. The rumors were that we were going to Japan, and the other rumors we were going to Okinawa. We didn't know where we were going. As I said, the Army never tells you. So we were on the ship for about 2 days. Then we found out we were going to Pearl Harbor. That was really the fact. We pulled up in Pearl Harbor about a week later, I guess, and it was one of the worst sights you would ever want to see. American ships were blown up all around there. Some of them were sticking up out of the water. Some of them were still smoking, and the whole area around it was bombed and everything. Well, they pulled us in. They unloaded our ships, and they set up our big guns and everything. Our soldiers set them up. And fortunately, I didn't have to set up with them because I was driving a truck then. So I left those guys. A few hours later, you could hear our big cannons going off. They had ammunition, plenty of it. And they were testing their guns, shooting over the ocean. The airplane, the anti-aircraft guns were going off and everything. It was something to hear. And we were doing other things. We were hauling material, helping them build an airfield and like that. Well, we stayed in Pearl Harbor for a year. And we were training, drilling, and everything all year long. And then the orders came out, a rumor started, rather, that we were moving out. We were going out again. And nobody knew where. Nobody knew that the whole regiment wasn't going. Then after about a week or so, everybody's yelling, there's a list on the wall, there's a list out there. Everybody's going, the name's on the list. So everybody stopped everything they're doing. We all ran over to the list to see if our name was on it. My name was on it. It said, Morris William A. Jr., Corporal, promoted to rank of sergeant, in charge of all motor transportation. I said, wow. I was in charge of all of the trucks that we had, and the trucks that we're getting, the Jeeps and all that. And everybody on the list was promoted from whatever they were. They were promoted to rank of sergeant. There were 150 names on the list, and we were being transferred, not the whole regiment. The 369th stayed in Hawaii. And a day or two later, they told us to get all of our gear, we're moving out. So the 150 of us were loaded onto the trucks, and they drove us down, and we wound up at the waterfront again. Here we go again. Time for Bill Morris to get seasick. So they loaded us on the ship, and we pulled out. And then the rumors started again where we're going. Nobody knew. After a day or two, we found out we were coming stateside, back to the United States. And we were very happy. We weren't the only 150 on the ship, don't get me wrong. There were other soldiers, but they had nothing to do with us. And we came back, and we wound up in Camp Stewart, Georgia. Now, Camp Stewart, Georgia is one of the most racist camps there was in the United States. Black soldiers were not welcome. They were not wanted. They were treated like dogs when we got there, and it was just bad. So anyhow, we came in, all 150 of us came in, and when you arrive in a new station like that, the first thing you do, you have the captain and the officers that are in charge, they come out and they greet you. Then that night or the next night, they have a big parade for you. The band plays, and you have a big parade where you parade all around, and then you who have come from overseas, you're the guest, and you stand in the guest area. Well, the band never played, the bugle never blew for us. Nobody came out and greeted us. We were there, all 150 of us. And we found out the reason later on. It dawned on me just a few years ago why that happened. First, it was a racist camp. All of the officers there were white. We were too experienced for them because we had already received a year of basic training, and we had already received a year of overseas combat training. These fellas would, and we had volunteered for the Army. They had been drafted. And when they were drafted, some of them were presidents of the bank or presidents of corporations and all, and they had connections with other people, and they were promoted to sergeants and to lieutenants and captains and all, but they had no idea what they were doing. And they did not want to meet with us because we had too much experience for them, and we would have put them to shame. So we never met them. When we received orders to do something, the orders were given to our first sergeant by, I don't know, by telephone or radio or airplane or something, I don't know. I have no idea how he got his orders, but he would relay them to us. Now, my job was, I was in charge of teaching the soldiers how to drive trucks. I had three other sergeants under me and two corporals who took orders from me. So I would take the orders from the first sergeant, and then I would relay them to my other sergeants. Now, we had to teach the soldiers how to drive trucks when their wheels were buried in the sand, when they were buried in the mud, how to drive over nothing but rocks, how to drive up hills when stones and rocks were being thrown down at you, and how to drive up the mountain when it was all rocks. Well, we did that for week after week. Then I was told that when they come in each day, they had to use a special grease that we had, and they had to cover the motor of the trucks. Well, every day we come in about 2 hours, and they'd have to put their hands in this tub of grease and put it all on the trucks. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, it got boring. One day, when I stepped outside and stepped back in the area where they were working, everybody in there was covered with grease. The soldiers had gone crazy. They had a grease fight. You've had food fights, and you've had egg fights. They had a grease fight. They took the grease out of the ground, they stuck it all over their faces and everything, all over their uniforms and everything, and they were having a ball. And I stepped in at the wrong time, and they picked on me. I think all of them covered me with grease. And so this went on for about a half hour, and then finally I called them to attention, and I said, okay, before anyone sees you or before the officers see you, get back to the barracks, get cleaned up, change your uniform and everything, get ready for the next formation. So they went in, changed and everything. They were wondering whether I was going to put them on extra duty for fighting with the grease, but I had no intention of doing that. I was that happy that they found some way to relieve some of the strain that they were under and have something that entertained them for a while. So there was no extra duty, no details, and none of that garbage. They went back and we went in for the next formation. The next formation they had was mess. I told you about mess last week. Remember I brought the mess kit in, the canteen and all, and told you that you have your meals and you put it in that mess kit, and your eggs and cereal and milk and your syrup and all runs together, and instead of having individual things, you eat it all at once. Well, okay, we did the training and we had mess and everything. The next day we went back to training. The next day I was called in the office, and my ears popped or something popped. Okay. I was called into the office, and I was given instructions that tomorrow, when they do their training, at the end of the training with the trucks, they will drive to the end of the river. They want to get rid of us. They want to drown us. They told us to drive to the end of the river, and you'll see a flag. And when you see that flag, drive in the river and go until you come to the next flags. And when you come to the next flags, turn around and come back. Well, I was the lead truck, I'm sorry to say, and it was my job to go out first. So I went out and told them to follow me, and I looked in my mirror to make sure they followed me, because I wasn't doing this alone. I pulled out into the river, and the water started in over my shoes, over my knees, up to my waist, and I hadn't gotten anywhere near the flags yet. And finally, the water stopped when it got about here, and I was riding through the water, and I got up to the flags, and we turned around and came back. And the beautiful part of it is our engine in our truck did not stop. That's why all of that grease was being put on there. We were covering the engine of the trucks to protect them from the water. And we drilled that like that every day. And every day after the drill, I would say to them, okay, we're going back, we put the grease on. There was no fooling around from then on. Everybody was serious about putting the grease on because we had no idea what it was for, but we knew it was for something that was going to happen someplace at some time. Well, we finished training that unit, and they shipped out. They were there with us for about 6 months where we trained them. I trained them in the driving of the trucks. The other sergeants were training them in classes how to handle their rifles and other other sergeants were training them in the obstacle course, where I told you about climbing in the, crawling in the mud and all that. And others were teaching them about who you respect, who you take orders from and all that. And so they were fully trained, and they moved out. And the same day they moved out, some new ones came in. Does anyone remember what we called them? Good. No, yeah, we called them privates. And what was the other name we called them? Remember the other name we called them? It was a bird? Yard birds. Everybody was asleep, huh? We called them yard birds. New soldiers called a yard bird. I was a yard bird when I came in. And so yard birds came in, and we had to go through the whole thing again, training them from scratch, number one. Actually, I told you about the soldier who was insubordinate, the one that stuck the gun in my face. You remember that? Yes. Oh, good golly. Okay, well, that happened here. That didn't happen before that, but I told you that because I had to tell you that to keep you awake. And so now these new soldiers are here. We did all the training of them. They had the same training and all, so I'm not going to bore you with that. They had the same training as the ones that had just left. Now these guys, 6 months training was up, and we were moving out. And they had gone on the train to wherever they were shipped to. And then all of a sudden there was a whole lot of confusion in the camp. The officers were hollering over the loudspeaker. We never saw them. And they wanted to know, well, how come the 150 sergeants are still here? Blah, blah, blah. We're listening to this. And all, no, they should be out of here. They wanted to get us out of that camp so bad. We were supposed to have shipped out with the last group that went. And somebody messed up in the orders somewhere along the line, and they let us stay there. Well, they wanted us out so fast that they backed the train in and put us on the train and shipped us out. We went on the train, and can anybody think where we wound up? You only get one guess.
Me?
No, we wound up in Staten Island. We wound up Staples in Staten Island, Pouch Terminal, it's called. Pouch, I think it's called Pouch something now. It's Pouch Terminal, it's where you get the Easy Pass now. At that time, it was Pouch Terminal, and all of the military ships in this part of the country that were going to Europe would load up down there. And women, or ladies, well, in those they were women, they weren't ladies then. They were working the cranes and the forklifts and their hands and everything. They were loading the ships that were going to Europe. All the men were in the Army. And so we pulled in there by train, and they unloaded us and told us to get on the ship. And we got on the ship, and the same guys we had just left were on this ship. And I was sitting there. That is right on the foot of Bay Street. I could look over on Bay Street and see people walking up and down. And I only lived 2 miles from there. But this time I was not going AWOL. I stayed on the ship. And we stayed there loading for about maybe 2 or 3 days. They were loading soldiers and equipment. And then we backed out and we pulled away. We pulled out into the ocean, and we got out about 10 minutes out in the water, and we met up with some more ships. When we met up with those ships, we also met up with quick Navy ships. We met up with, I don't know what kind of ships they are. I don't know the names of the Navy ships, but they were fighters, I know that. They had all kind of guns on them, and we met up with one, was a submarine chaser. It had a big thing like a big drum on it, and that was full of some kind of dynamite or something that they dropped in the water that would blow up submarines. So I know that was a submarine chaser. And then we went further, and we met up with more ships, about 15 or 20 more ships. And when we met up with them, there was more military ships out there. So the Japanese didn't get all of our Navy like they were saying. There were a lot of them were someplace else. Well, we met up with these other Navy ships, and then we met up with an aircraft carrier. I really felt good when I saw them. And we went further in the ocean, and this is the Atlantic Ocean. We're heading to Europe. And got further out, we met up with more ships. These ships I'm talking about were loaded with soldiers and soldiers' equipment and all that. Food and ammunition, all that stuff was on the ships. And every time we met up with a new group, we met up with more more Navy ships that were protecting us. Altogether, I think when we finally got out in the ocean, there must have been about 100 ships loads of soldiers and material. Well, they would be going down like this, and then all of a sudden you'd see them all scatter and turn around and go in different directions. And we soldiers are looking at it. The sailors knew what was going on. We had no idea. And then all of a sudden, the Navy ships would start shooting up in the air. Their big cannons would go off, and their machine guns would go off. And the submarine chaser, he would shoot a big tub up in the air, which would go up in the air and it'd come down in the water. And when it's in the water, it would explode down there someplace. And everything from the bottom of the ocean would come up and go almost 2 stories high. All this water and all. It was an amazing thing to see. But we didn't, at that time, we didn't know what was going on because we trained in the Army, not Navy. So we would ask the soldiers later on, and that's when I learned that those were submarine chasers. And if there was a submarine in the water anywhere around that, it was gone. And the guns that said the ships were shooting their guns. And then they would all come and the ships would scatter again. They would go down the water so far, about 5 of them would turn around and come back and pass us like they were going to change their mind, they were going home. And they would go so far and they would turn around and these ships would come back and all. I asked the sailors what was going on. They said that's to confuse any submarines that are down in the water, because if they had targets set on any of those ships, that would divert them and they'd have to change all their radar and stuff. And anyone that was sitting down in a stationary place, they would have to change everything. Well, we got into Europe. We wound up in England. All of the ships wound up in England. We didn't lose any ships, not that I know of, and I'm pretty sure we would have heard. And when we got there, we sat out in the ocean for days because there were so many ships that had to be unloaded, and there were a large number of them were ahead of us. They were getting unloaded before we were, so we had to sit out there and wait. Oh, good. I was just getting ready to say time out. Question time before we go to Europe, before we unload the ship. Yes. You got to talk loud.
When there was a police fight with you during this.
Relay. Who's relaying it? Who's going to tell me what he said?
It said,
You got to holler.
when there was a grease fight, did he throw any grease?
Did you throw any grease in the grease fight?
Oh, yes. Of course, payback. I'm not going to stand there and let him grease me up. No. Payback. There was no sergeant then. I was just like them. I was a private like them too. Slapped up grease on them. Women.
What was the worst day ever?
The worst what?
The worst day ever.
Worst thing ever?
Worst day.
Worst day ever? For who, me or them? For me? Gee, that's hard to tell you. My days weren't bad. I guess my toothache was the worst day I had. Certainly, no, okay. Is what? The funniest thing that happened to me? The what? Funniest thing? The finest thing? The funnest days? The funnest days? Oh, you're giving me some buttes. I don't usually have to think about this. The fun days, I don't know. There wasn't any particularly fun days for me. I was all right with them. I had no problem. Wait a minute, hold it a minute. Go ahead.
Was you ever nervous when they wouldn't tell you where you were going?
No, we weren't nervous when they never told us where we were going because it didn't make any difference. One place was the same as the other when you got there.
Were you scared when they seen you in the video when you said that Pearl Harbor was attacked?
When I saw Pearl Harbor,
No, were you scared when they said Pearl Harbor was attacked?
was I scared when I heard that Pearl Harbor was attacked? Well, no, I wasn't scared when I heard that because, number one, like all the rest of the Army, I didn't know what Pearl Harbor was. I didn't know where Pearl Harbor was. I had no idea. And it didn't worry any of us. We were all trying to find out, hey, teachers, you got to help me out. You got to pick these kids for the questions. Go ahead. Stand up. I can't hear you.
How many times have you guys pulled jokes on each other?
Oh, we pulled jokes on each other quite often, but the soldiers couldn't pull jokes on us because I was a sergeant and the other was a corporal. They couldn't pull jokes on the sergeant or the corporal. You can't pull jokes on anyone that's any higher than you in rank. I could pull jokes on the other sergeants, and we did. Good.
During the war, have you seen any U-480 submarines or Type 7 U-boats?
Oh. Did you ever see any U-480 type submarines during the war?
Any what? Any who?
Say it again. U-480s?
The U-480s, I don't even know what a U-480 is. I'm sorry, that's Navy stuff. I can't help you. I guess I saw them and didn't even know it. Go ahead.
What kind of pranks did you pull on the other sergeants?
Oh. What kind of pranks did you pull on the other sergeants?
We had one that we called a hot foot. And the sergeant would be laying in bed asleep. He'd have his shoes on. And around his shoes, we would stick matches. And never try this. Never. I'm not going to tell you. All right, look, never try this. This is serious. And it's something you shouldn't do. The Army, we had fixed sole shoes, and you could do this and get away with it. Promise me you'll never do this. I'm serious. We would line, I'm not even going to show you how you do it. We would line the soldiers' shoes with matches, book matches. And we would light them. Everybody knew what was going on. He's laying in bed taking an afternoon nap. And we would light them. When you light one, the whole shoe would catch fire. And for a minute or so, he would kick his foot like that. And the next minute, ow! And he would try to kick his shoe off, but it's laced all the way up. He can't kick it off. And then he realized he got a hot foot. And then he would beat it off. And after a while, it goes through to your foot, and you feel it. The other prank we had was when he would be sleeping, a sergeant would be sleeping, we'd get a can of shaving cream, and while he's laying down, we'd just give him, we'd start with his head first and go around his head. And then we'd give one big squirt of shaving cream on his face, and we'd toss the can to another soldier over there who would grab it, and you'd walk around like nothing happened. Okay? Somebody, go ahead.
How did you feel when you had the truck and you went in the river or the lake?
When I had to do it?
When you had to
Drive into the river?
Yeah.
Well, I was very concerned. Number one, I can't swim, I'll tell you now. I can't swim. And we have no windows, no doors, no seat belts, nothing in the truck. And if the water decides to take you out, well, say goodbye because you're going. And I was very concerned about it. But after it stopped coming up to about here, it didn't worry me any more than that. I've got to stop with questions. Go ahead, I'll take you.
How did you feel when you got tricked?
Why didn't I show you that trick?
How did you feel when you got tricked?
Well, when I did that trick,
Do you see it?
it was played on me. That's how I learned it.
How did you feel?
How did I feel? I felt great. It was payback. they had done it, all these things were done to me, and I was getting back at you. I can't take any more questions, okay? Because I'll be running too far behind. We're in England. We just unloaded the ship, and it came time for us to unload. Our ship pulled up to dock, and we looked down there, and we all said the same thing, where are we going to go? There's no room for us. And after a while, they unloaded us off the ship, and there was space for us. They marched us down through all the other soldiers and all, and when we got down there, they parked us right next to our trucks and our Jeeps and all. And there must have been at least 10,000 soldiers that were unloaded, because at least 3 ships unloaded. There may have been more than that. And so we were standing there, bored as could be, nothing to do. Every once in a while, we would have to tell the fellas, all right, line up, you're going to do calisthenics. And we would have to put them through drills and all, because we just couldn't let them get too bored and hanging around. So there was nothing we could do but that exercise. And way off in the distance, we could hear a dog bark every once in a while. And so a dog bark, no big deal. And we went on, and we'd stand in groups, we'd be talking and like that. And then after a while, you could hear the dog. He got a little louder, you could hear him barking. And then we went on doing what we were doing, which was nothing. And then after a while, the dog barking got real close to us. And the next thing I know, we're standing there talking, and here comes this dog through the crowd. I don't know where he came from. He had a stone in his mouth, and he dropped the stone on my shoe. He opened his mouth, dropped the stone on my shoe. Out of all those soldiers that are out there, he came past all of them and came to me. And then he started barking and running back and forth, wagging his tail and everything. I'm totally puzzled. Number one, why me with the dog, and why the stone, and what do you want now? Thank you. That didn't work. He kept on. And so some of the guys said, he wants you to throw the stone. Not me. I said, go ahead, pick a stone up and throw it. Nobody wanted to do it. So when the dog got way over there, I reached down and picked up the stone, and I threw it. And the dog wanted to catch the stone. He ran and got that stone and brought it back to me and put it on my foot again. And so for about a half hour, our big entertainment was watching a dog chase a stone. Now, you know how bored we were. And then after I got tired, one of the other guys started throwing it. Then the orders came down, all right, we're moving out. And so I said to the corporal, I was driving a Jeep then, and I said to the corporal, I said, what are we going to do with the dog? And he said, do you see any houses around? I said, oh, come on, there's no houses. All the houses had been bombed and blown up. There was no houses around any place, no civilians, nothing. Where the dog came from, I don't know. And so he said, well, let's take the dog. I said, okay. So I said, dog, jump in. And the dog jumped in the Jeep and went right in the back seat and sat down. And we were in total shock. We're looking at him. Maybe this dog was trained by someone. I said, nah. So as I was passing him, looking at him, he was panting. So I took off my helmet, and I took my canteen off, and I poured some water in my helmet, and I gave him a drink. And he drank all the water, and I dumped it out and put my helmet on, put my canteen away, and I got in the Jeep. And then I told the other drivers, let's go. So we pulled out, and we're riding along, and I glanced back at the dog, and he was in heaven, riding in the back of the Jeep. And he was sitting up just as straight. So I said to the corporal, I said, we've got to name this dog. And I said, what are we going to name him? So he came up with some name, and neither one of us liked it and all. And I named him something, and he didn't like it. And off the top of my head, I said, let's call him Trixie. So he said, Trixie. All right. So I turned around and I said, hey, Trixie. And the dog started wagging his tail. I said, oh, your name's Trixie. So we rode on for all day. We drove all night. And it got real dark and everything. And Trixie, I found out when there was trouble around, Trixie did not bark. And one thing she didn't do was bark. Trixie would only growl if there was trouble around or if something wasn't right. Well, it got to be dark, and I signaled the drivers, let's stop and let's get some sleep. We had been driving all night and all day and half of the night. And usually when we sleep, when we sleep, we jump out of our truck, we go underneath the truck, and we take our helmet and our rifle and our gas mask, and we go under the truck and we go to sleep. Well, when I got out of the truck, there was a log there, a log with two branches like this. And I said, oh, heck, I'm sleeping on this. And it had been snowing. There was quite a bit of snow out, but things were buried, but this wasn't completely buried. So I went to lay down on this, and Trixie started pulling me, and pulling me and growling. And that was the first time she had ever done that. And it scared me, because I didn't know what the dog wanted. And she grabbed me a couple of times, and so I said, oh, no, Trixie, I'm too tired to play. Let's play later. Come on, I'm going to sleep. And I laid down on that, and out I went. And Trixie laid there with me. And when daybreak, I woke up, and I was signaling the drivers to get ready to move out. And I looked down. It was the body of an American soldier I was laying on. He was frozen to death. He had been killed, and he had laid there and froze to death just like this. And I laid on him all night. I laid on him all night, and when I got up, I said, I'm sorry, or something like that. And I said a prayer for him, and we drove off. And the rest of the soldiers, we got in the trucks, and we drove off. And we drove on, and we rode until we finally came to a place where all of the soldiers were again. And we all got out of our Jeeps and trucks and parked them there. And we were there for a day and all. Nobody knew what was going on. And then all of a sudden, the next day, everybody said, they're moving out, they're moving out, they're moving out. Everybody's all excited and yelling and everything. And we come to find out that at the edge of the water, things like dumpsters, like the dumpsters you see on the road where people put their trash, but they were wider than that. They would hold 4 trucks. These things had backed up, and 4 trucks went on there. And when they went on there, the back of it closed up, and these things pulled out into the water. And there was 4 trucks with soldiers, with the drivers of the trucks on it. And they drove out. We had no idea what was going on. But as soon as they got out in the water, everything broke loose. Guns started going off, bombs were shooting up in the air, and machine guns, you could see the bullets. The bullets are, so you notice them. Every 5th bullet out of a machine gun has sort of a mark on it, and it sort of has something that you can follow on it. It's called a tracer bullet. Every 5th one that's up there is a tracer bullet. So you can see them going overhead and all, and the bombs were going off, and the air was full of smoke and all. And we on there, we had no idea what was going on. All we knew is that those trucks had pulled in there, and they were being fired at. Well, as soon as I heard that, I sent word to all the soldiers. I said, I need some clothesline rope in a hurry. And everybody said, where are you going to get clothesline? I said, let the word go down. So it went all through all of the soldiers that were down there, clothesline rope, clothesline rope. It went on all day long. No clothesline rope came back in. And early that next morning, a clothesline rope came back in, a big bundle of clothesline rope. I was in heaven. What I needed it for was to make a harness to tie Trixie in the truck because I didn't know what was happening. I knew there was bombs going off and Trixie could get blown out. I made a harness where she was tied in and she could only fall this far out of the door and pull herself back in. Well, time came and they told us, all right, load up. And my 4 trucks pulled onto this barge. And they said, when the red light comes on, start your engine and step on the gas as hard as you can and keep your foot on the gas. And when the green light comes on, drive off. Okay, everything's fine. Bombs are bursting all over us and everything. When the green light came on, they forgot to tell us that the front is going to open up. That was a runway for the truck. That it was going to open up, and the whole ocean was going to come in on us. When it opened up, the whole river came in on us. The water came in right up to here. Oh my God. I was scared to death. And the motor of the truck was running, and you could feel the wheels in the water turning. And when we looked out there, the worst sight you ever wanted to see, the water was covered with bodies of American soldiers, those soldiers who had been killed. And the water was blood red with their blood. The ocean was just covered with it. Our Navy ships were out there firing at the enemy up there, and the enemy was up in the mountains firing down at us. And we were still in the water, the wheels are still churning. And finally, our truck, my wheels hit the sand. They would hit and they would miss and they'd miss. And there on the ground on Omaha Beach was where we landed. The beach was covered with American soldiers again. Dead bodies all over, bodies with arms blown off, legs blown off. They were there, bodies with soldiers crying, asking for help, asking for the medics. The medics are the doctors out there, the Army personnel who are trained in medical care. And the soldiers were hollering, medics, medics, medics. There weren't enough medics to get to them, and bombs were going near us. Trixie had a habit. She would put her front paws up in the window and her hind paws on the seat, and she'd be looking at everything. Every 2 minutes, Trixie was getting blown out of the seat, and the harness that I had made at the clothesline was the only thing that was saving her. She was blown off the seat so many times. One time I glanced over at Trixie, and it was like that, and Trixie sort of was saying to me, what in the heck is going on? So I would be talking to Trixie, Trixie, we're in for it, hang in there. And then I'd go on concentrating on trying to maneuver around the bodies of the soldiers. And there would be soldiers who were getting shot right next to me. I couldn't reach out to help them or anything. Our job was to get the trucks to the bottom of the mountain and get them up the mountain. Well, when we got to the bottom of the mountain, I'm running out of time. When we got to the bottom of the mountain, we tried to get up, and the machine guns would be firing at us, and we'd have to turn around and start all over again. And sometimes when we get a little ways up the mountain, a great big rock would be pushed off by the enemy, by the German soldiers. They'd push a rock off, and that would be bouncing and bouncing. And if it hit our truck, then we were finished. So we'd have to turn around and come back again and start over. Finally, after the second day, I made it to the top of the mountain, and a couple of the trucks were already up there, and they cheered and everything that we made it up. By the end of the second day, all 16 of my trucks had made it up there. I didn't lose one soldier or one truck. I want to go into questions, but I want to get you. We only got a few minutes. All right, I'll take questions, and we'll go to part 2 next week, I guess. Okay. I wanted to get them down to the things under the truck.
Oh, not next week.
No, I have to do it next week. Are there any questions? Relay the question, please. Stand up.
When you saw it, when you were on Omaha Beach in the water, when you saw the river and the blood, how did it
Oh, it was the most terrible sight I've ever seen in my life. The question was, when we were at Omaha Beach, what was it like? What was the sight? As I said, it was the most terrible thing I've ever seen, to see men with the same uniform you got out, laying out there dead. And I'm sorry. Their blood all over the water. And to know there's nothing you're going to do to help them. And then when you go into land on the beach itself, to see the same thing and know that you just can't help them, that they died there. And my biggest prayer was, and which I did at Omaha Beach and other places, was, dear God, don't let me get killed over here where nobody knows me, and don't let me become a prisoner of war of this vicious army. That's what I prayed so many times, and I prayed it at Omaha Beach. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I can't get the question.
Were you and the other soldiers crying for the soldiers that died?
No. At that time, it was something that didn't affect us like that, like now. I mean, that was something, I mean, the sorrow and the sadness of seeing them, yes. But as far as helping them and anything like that, no. That didn't even enter your mind, because you had a job to do, and that might prevent others from being killed. Teachers, pick some of these kids for me, please. Go ahead.
Have you heard in the battle?
No. I'm one of the fortunate soldiers that never even broke a fingernail. Go ahead.
United States soldier.
Yeah, when you saw the United States soldier like frozen, when you laid on him, was he like pale cold or like frozen ice?
What's the question?
The soldier that you slept when Trixie was trying to stop you, the night that you slept, you wanted to know if he was pale, like, or was he covered in snow?
Well, I don't know how he looked. His face was covered with snow. He was covered, almost buried in the snow. I knocked some of the snow off him so that he wouldn't get buried too far and they wouldn't find him. I knocked some of the snow off him before I left, but his face was covered. Go ahead.
When you said the water, when you were driving the water was up to here. Didn't like Trixie get drowned by the water if it was like up?
No, Trixie had sense enough to put her head up as high as she could on the dashboard. It was only when she got blown back into the water. One time she got blown back there, and I had no idea where she was. I know she was hanging there someplace, but I couldn't help her. I got to get to different ones. Right.
What branch of the military do you think was the best?
Was the best? My branch. Good.
Like this woman is Trixie, she's passed.
Did Trixie pass? Trixie.
Pass what? Oh, did she pass now?
Yeah,
Died 10 years after we got back. Trixie died. Yeah.
You
Good.
still have the stone? You still have the stone?
No, unfortunately, I didn't bring that stone back. I mean, I've been asked that question so many times, but no, at that time, it didn't mean anything to me. So I didn't bring it back. I didn't ask you a question, did I?
What state was you in when that time when you found the soldier under the car? What state? What state?
What state was I in when I found the soldier where?
In the snow.
Or what country? We're in England. Yeah. I can't come to you. I asked you a question, I think, didn't I?
Did you almost get shot during a battle?
Who?
Did you almost get shot during a battle?
Yeah, I almost got shot a couple of times. I'll cover it a little later on. I might not get it till next week. Okay? I had a question for you. I'm sorry. You're out too. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
When the rocks were falling down the mountain, how many times did you have to go like back down? How many times did you have to
Oh,
go back down?
between the bullets and the bullets and the rocks and the bombs, I spent a whole day going back down. One time I was almost to the top, and they started firing at us. I guess we got too close to the top, and there was a hand grenade or something was thrown under us. I had to go all the way back down again. It was either that or topple down the mountain. Is in the beginning of France, just off from the English Channel, which is connected to England, the English Channel in Omaha. There's a map.
No, we're going to have a big map next week, right, Mr.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next week, they're going to give you a big map that's going to show all of this. And I will not be the historian, but someone else will. Way in the back. You.
What kind of praise did you say for the people, for the guy that you found dead under the truck?
What kind of what?
What kind of prayer did you say after you found out that you were sleeping in the car?
No, the soldiers on Omaha Beach.
When I saw the soldier at Omaha Beach, I said the same one I just told you. Don't let me become a casualty out there or a prisoner. That was the main prayer I said all through the war, all through Europe and England. I mean, in Pearl Harbor and all, I didn't need any. No, I can't come to you yet. Hold it. Oh, you, I just did you. Someone I didn't get. Come on. I'll be in the back in a minute. Go ahead.
The people that are laying on the sand on the beach, were those members of the Navy SEALs?
No, they were not, the members on the beach were not members of the Navy SEALs or anything like that. They were Army soldiers. They were just regular soldiers who were, I guess they were infantry. I don't know. I don't know what they were. Go ahead.
Have you ever become a prisoner?
No, thank God I never became a prisoner. I could go way in the back. No, I had you already, didn't I? Okay. No. Oh, I got another dog since I've been, I don't even know how you tell this. Yeah, I had another dog since Tricks.
But not in the war.
Not in the war. Yes, go ahead.
Do you ever meet the president?
No, you don't want to meet me. I had a question for you. Sorry. All right, go ahead.
When Trixie was keep falling off like the seat, how did you feel?
When Trixie was blown off her seat?
Yeah.
I didn't even pay any attention to that. I couldn't. I had my hands full trying to maneuver around the dead soldiers and the wounded soldiers and trying to get to the... Trixie was on her own. And I think she knew that. Good, yes.
Did you have any protection other than your helmet? Did they give you bulletproof vests or anything?
There was no such thing as bulletproof vests then, I don't think. I know there weren't. And no, all we had was our helmet to protect us and the fact that we were American soldiers, I guess. Don't shoot us. Questions?
Would you say that she was as smart as you during the war? Do you know what was going on?
I think I got that question. Was Trixie smarter than me?
Yes.
99% smarter than me. And remember something, Trixie didn't enlist, she was drafted. Go ahead.
Were you getting enough supplies during the war, or did you run out at any time?
Good question. Were we getting enough supplies? Yes. We had all the supplies we wanted. We were supplying the tanks. I didn't tell you that. Okay, that's because that comes a little later. But no, we had all of the supplies we wanted. All kinds. All kinds. Go ahead.
Would you allow a German soldier to kill Trixie?
No. I wouldn't even let an American soldier kill Trixie. And that's the tops. Was there a part two to your question? Oh, okay. There are pictures. There's pictures in that white bag of Trixie. They should have been floating around. How much time do we have?
Ms. Eli, how much time do we have?
The pictures of Trixie, will you pass those around to the class that has to leave first? We have some pictures and I'll show you what Trixie looked like. Go ahead, I'm coming back.
Did Trixie ever come in handy? Like when you were about to get attacked, did she come in handy? Or did she like help you when a box?
Did Trixie ever help you, did she ever save your life in any kind of situation?
Part 3. I'm sorry, but you don't want to know now because I have to lead up to it. Go ahead. Hold it. Go ahead. Trixie was a terrier. Trixie was she's only a little dog. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Go ahead. I think about Trixie all the time. And we were always talking about Trixie. Trixie lived with me after the war in my house. Go ahead. Did what?
Could she smell explosives? Was she like a bomb dog?
Oh, no. Not that I know of.
Have you ever jumped out of an airplane or been in a tank?
Louder. Say it louder.
Have you ever been in a tank or jumped out of a plane?
Have I ever been in a plane and jumped out of a plane? No. No. I wasn't in the paratroopers. Go ahead. The question was, if we were in battle and I dropped my helmet, would I stop and get it? If there was any way possible, yes. That was the only protection I had against this is hard, but I needed the helmet. No, I had a question from you too. Oh, who else? Go. I didn't even get any of your question. I didn't get any of the question.
All the things that you were learning while you were in training, was that all relatively new technology for this war, or is it stuff that was used in World War I as well?
No, it was neither. It was this stuff that I've been learning relative to the war they're fighting now or World War I. No, it wasn't relative to any of them. World War II was in a class of its own. I mean, the equipment we had was different from what they're using now and what they used in World War I. And as far as I know, at that time it was up to date. I know that our regiment, and when I transferred from the 369th to the 4251st Trucking Company, that was actually up-to-date equipment. And the trucks that we were driving, as I told the students here, we had no windows, no heaters, no doors, and no seat belts. You're on your own. Yes. Yay!
How did you know how to drive a truck before you got into the army?
I knew how to drive a truck because when I was a kid as a civilian, my family had the largest moving company here on Staten Island in this part of New York City. And they owned 5 trucks and 3 tractor trailers, the 18-wheelers, and I used to drive them. I didn't drive far, I was only 17 and 16 and like that. But when they were parked in the yard or right outside in the street, I used to get in them and I would drive it from one end of the street to the other. In those days, there was only about 5 cars on the street every hour. And so if I stalled the truck, it was over the side and nobody came to get me. I had to get it back myself. And then I learned how to drive a tractor trailer the same way. And I had a couple of brothers who taught me the finer arts of it. Okay? So when I got in the Army, I was fully trained truck driver. Somebody I didn't call. Okay, Ms. Morris.
Someone over there asked a question about when you got married, and
That is not, yeah, that is part of the war.
yes, it is. So it was after, well, when?
I got married after I came back from Pearl Harbor. After I came back from Pearl Harbor. I had known my present wife since we were kids, since we were teenagers, about 15 years old. And she had bugged me all this time to marry her. And so when I came back, I figured, oh, well, all right, I'm going to ask her. My nose is not growing, thank goodness. And so when I came back from Pearl Harbor, it was a Saturday, and I asked her if she wanted to marry me, and I only got about 3 words of, do you want to? Yes! And so it was a Saturday, as I said, and by the time I got down to Borough Hall, it was closed. We couldn't get a license. Somebody told me where the man lived. He lived in Tottenville. I drove out to his house, and I said, I'm shipping out the next day. So he said, oh, come on. He went back to Borough Hall and opened up Borough Hall and gave me a license. And she had threatened him anyhow and told him if she didn't get the license, what was going to happen. and so we got to Borough Hall, we got the license. But this had started in the morning, late morning, around 12 o'clock. It was 8 o'clock at night now. And we're still trying to do this, and I'm getting sick of the idea now. And so we went to church to see the pastor, and fortunately he was there. And I told him, I said, we want to get married. He says, oh, all right, step in my office, we'll discuss the date and everything. I said, yeah, right here now. And he said, no. I said, I'm shipping out tomorrow morning. And so he said, all right, well, I have no witnesses. I said, the choir is practicing in there. So I said, you got all the witnesses you need. So he said, all right. And he went in and got some of the choir. And much to my surprise, my sister, my youngest sister, who was in the choir, and she was in there practicing. So we went in and we got married. And just as he finished, my mother and father popped up. And they said, no, you're not marrying her. No, that didn't happen. My mother and father popped up, and that was a big surprise, and I was wondering how they knew it. It took me 60-some years to figure out. My sister called them. It took me all those years to figure it out. And so we had about a 5-hour honeymoon? And I shipped out to Europe the next day, and I was gone. All hands are up all the time. Wait, choose. Go ahead.
Did Trixie risk her life to save yours?
That's part 3.
The question was, did Trixie risk her life to save mine? Next week. Go ahead.
How did you fight the enemies while going up the hill?
How did I fight the enemy going up the hill? I didn't. The other troops had it. The other troops we had there and the Navy out there, they had to do the fighting. Our job was to get up there and not worry about who was doing it. Well, I got my old faithfuls. Wait a minute. Go in the back. Go. Go. Talk loud because we're running out of time.
Who was older, Trixie or you?
Who was older, Trixie or you?
I don't know. I think we were both about the same age in years and in sense. Neither one of us had too much sense. But Trixie was very, very smart. She must have been older than me. Could have been my sergeant. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
When you got married, was Trixie there?
Trixie didn't come to the wedding. Trixie wasn't there at the time. My wife's name, you can ask her. She's right over there. Her name is Norcie, Norcie. But she wouldn't tell you anything. Go ahead.
How much of the ammunition was lost when all the bullets and the grenades were lost?
How much was lost? In the river? Oh, wait.
When you were first coming in on the boat,
How much was used?
no, how much was it lost when you said all the ammunition started going off at once?
Oh, I meant when I said all the ammunition started going off at once, I meant the guns started firing. It didn't, none of it washed overboard. Is that what you meant?
No, I meant like how much of it was fired.
How much was fired? I have no idea. I didn't fire any of it. And I couldn't keep track of it. My job was to get up the top of that hill. And we managed to do that. Somebody I didn't call on? Go ahead. Trixie stayed in my house. Hey, me, two women, I took orders from Trixie and her. Good.
Did Trixie ever help pull any pranks on you?
No, Trixie never pulled any pranks on me, thank goodness. I've got to skip you. I have to skip you. I got to go in the back. Go ahead.
How long were you in the service altogether?
I was in from 1939 to 1945. I was in before the World War II started until the very end of it. Come on, ladies, you got questions. You got questions. Ask them. Because I'm calling the same students all the time. Yes. No. When we were going up the mountain, the trucks were empty. Thank goodness, because if there had been anything in it, we would have toppled over. Because it was pretty steep going up there. Part two? Is there a part two?
Why would they send up the empty trucks?
Because that's the only one thing that can make it up the hill.
What was the mission?
Oh, our mission is in part 3 tomorrow, next week. Yeah.
What day did you land?
I don't know. I don't know. I'll try and check and look that up for next week and give you an answer. I hope. Fran!
Was there dog food in the army?
There was a question, was there dog food in the Army? I think from day one I was eating dog food. The only time we had good cooks was in camp in Oswego, New York, Port Ontario. That was the best cooks, and I was a private then, and I did KP, which is kitchen police, peeling potatoes, onions, and pots and pans. I did them every day I could get in there. And let me tell you something. I want to tell you how much pay we were getting then, too. I think you might be interested in that. From the day one, when we joined the Army, until the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, my pay was $22 a month. We got $22 a month. And in 369th, when I enlisted, there was another soldier in there with the same name as mine, William A. Morris, and he was a sergeant. And one day I got his pay. And whoa, that did not go too good. The sergeant came after me, and his eyes were like this and everything, and he was all swollen up and all, and he had no use for me. But I realized that I had either gotten someone else's check or something, but it had my name on it. But he made sure I gave it back to him in a hurry. And he knew, oh, I'm sorry, yes, go.
When you were teaching the soldiers about driving trucks, what was the hardest part for them to learn?
The whole thing, the question was when we were teaching them to drive trucks, was there any hard part? The whole thing was hard because they were new in the trucks They were new driving the trucks, and the things that we were giving them were obstacle courses. And for someone new who's stuck down and the wheels are almost all stuck in sand, and he's got to figure his way out of it. Although we had four-wheel drives and six-wheel drives and like that, it wasn't easy. And when they're riding over nothing but stones this big, the whole area covered with it, and they're bouncing back and forth and all, it was tough on them. And when they went into the water, it was tough on them. I got a new one.
I'm going to interrupt you because we have about 5 minutes till dismissal, so boys and girls, remember your questions. Let's give this to Morris.
I'm sorry, next time. Next Monday.
I know that you are probably as excited about Mr. Morris being here as I am. This is living history. He's lived what you read about in your history book. And this is such a special honor for you. And I just want to say how honored I am to have been included in this. And I hope to be able to get off from work next week and come back and hear part 3. And I also want to say to you, it's very important, as the principal mentioned, I ran for city council a couple of months ago. It's very important that you get involved in your communities and you learn to give something back. You learn to be a part of volunteerism, you work and you engage in civic engagement. Mr. Morris's life is a testament about what it's like to give back and the history and commitment to one's community that they live in. And so I hope that not only are you learning the historical importance of what Mr. Morris lived through, but also you hear the important part of his life where he gave back to make the lives of other people better. And so I want to thank you for inviting me, and I hope to come back and be a part of the rest of this living history.
Save your questions.
It's Steve Pipkin. Stephen Pipkin. You know me, right? Don't you know they're not funny?
Steven, that's not on TV. It's just video. Huh? That's not really like. No. They turned on. They got on TV. But they got it. I'm not in probably put on.
Okay, take care. See you next week. Take care now. I'm glad to know you. Okay, see you next week.
In one of the medals, it says, I think it says Europe, Africa, what does that mean?
No, not Africa. European Theater of Operations. Take care.
I have a question. Before the war started, was the life before that harder?